Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, good morning. And here we are. I want to first say what a great sacred honor this is for me to be here. I know that I don't take this lightly because Pastor Josh, if you were expecting Pastor Josh, I'm sorry, but this is not something he would give up easily or lightly. So I'm so excited to have this opportunity. And here we are, as we close out 2025. This is the time of year when people are kind of thinking, well, what can I do better next year, right? Is that something that you think about once in a while? It's a good time to look back and reflect on the events that the Lord has walked us through this year. I was aided in this practice by an unusual source, my iPhone. I was looking in my phone for a particular picture and kind of searching through there, and I discovered this feature that I never knew was there. The year in review. Anybody? Right? Have you found that yet? If you have an iPhone, look for it, the year in review. It gives you a snapshot of all of the stuff that you've walked through this year, all of the different events that you've documented with your photograph, right? And is it just me? Or does it seem to you that this time of year runs on super speed? Right? Anybody? Right? Does it seem like it's going 900 miles an hour? Maybe. If not, then you're blessed, I guess. The Bible speaks repeatedly about running. Isaiah tells us we shall run and not get weary. And Paul admonishes Timothy to run as to win the race. But there is another type of running that we're going to see in just a minute. The title of this sermon is Run, Don't Walk. Oh yeah, walk, don't run. I'm glad somebody's on top of it. Walk, don't run. The Bible's full of questions. Some are really good questions. Some are kind of maybe not so good. But there's a couple of questions that I think really bear our attention. The first one is, what must I do to be saved? What must I do to be saved? If you've not answered that question in your heart, please, 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 please do not leave this room without asking somebody to pray with you about it. What must I do to be saved? It's probably the most important question that anybody could ever ask in all of life. The other question found in Genesis chapter 16, and it's the story of Hagar. Now let me just set the backdrop for you. Here's Abram, before he became Abraham, and Sarai, or Sarah, and God has promised them a child. You all remember the story? Right? Anybody? And they're not having a baby. And it gets to the point where they're getting really up in years. Like, way up in years. And Sarah gets this crazy idea. She's got this handmaiden named Hagar. And she says, look, the Lord's not giving me a child, and he's promised you a son, and so here's my plan. You go in with my handmaiden Hagar, and we'll kind of do this surrogate thing. And she'll have a baby, and it will be our baby. And so he says, well, all right, if you think that's what we're supposed to do. And so he goes in with Hagar, and she conceives, and we know from the end of the story, she has Ishmael. And from that point forward, you've got Ishmael, the Ishmaelites and the Israelites, and that's a whole other sermon. Out of the whole process, Sarah becomes kind of, I'll use a polite word, rude to Hagar. And Hagar's had enough. She says, that's it, I'm out of here. And she packs up Ishmael and she heads out. And she's running away. Sometimes running is a good thing. Like when you're running, like Paul says to Timothy, run that you would win the race. But sometimes running away is not the right thing to do. And here she is under a tree, and she's lamenting, and she's frustrated, and she's just, Urgh. And the angel of the Lord comes to her. Now, I don't know if you've had this experience, but when the angel of the Lord comes to you, you pay attention. Right? Am I right? And he asked her the second most important question you can ask. Come on. Where have you come from and where are you going? Where have you come from and where are you going? It's a question that requires some contemplation. In considering these two questions, we need to frame our perspective. Where have you come from is easy, right? That's easy. You can, if you're like me and you've got your iPhone and you can just year in review. It tells me where I've come from. My wife, Terry, works at a credit union. And she was there one day, this about a week ago or so, maybe a little more. And a member and her got in a conversation about life and, oh, well, how long have you been married? And she proudly proclaimed, 45 years. And I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. And she thought to herself later as she's driving home, 45 years of events. Now think about that. As she recounted the story to me, as she's driving home and she's thinking about those 45 years. She walked with me through 7 sinus surgeries, Guillain-Barré syndrome, the birth of all 3 of our children, the death of our first child. She walked with me through 45 years of ministry and heartbreak and betrayal. 45 years of victory. 45 years of blessing. 45 years of seeing the hand of God move on our lives and in our family. And when she stood there and weighed the balance, it was real easy to see where we've come from and where we're going. Where we're going is not so easy. We make our plans. We hope for good things to happen. We can even dream. Shoot, I dream of breaking 80 on the golf course someday. We can all have our dream. Ever take a road trip? Here you are with the kids in the car. You're heading down the highway. Maybe it's a vacation. And men, you know we have one agenda, right? I want to get there. I want to get there. I want to get there. I got to go. And we're just cruising down the highway. And we get to that place where the kids are screaming in the back, Dad, please, I have to stop. Oh, I don't want to stop. Please don't make me stop. All right, fine. I understand. I'd rather stop than clean up a mess. So we find the rest stop, and we pull off, and the kids are going to the bathroom. And I'm standing on the side of the highway, watching the trucks go by. I pass that guy, and I pass that guy, and I pass that guy. Steve Jobs, who was the founder of Apple Computer, once said, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." I want you to think about that for a second. And I want to suggest to you today that instead of running through life, we consider what the Bible says about walking. Ephesians chapter 5 tells us 3 things about walking. There it is. Walk in love, Ephesians 5:2. Therefore, be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love, as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. We need to walk in love. First and foremost, it's a command. 2 John chapter 6 tells us it is a command of the Lord that we walk in love. That's the key to the Christian life. If you're not walking in love, you're fooling yourself. You're going through the motions. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 18 and 19 says this. Well, I'll back up to 17. That Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the width and length and depth and height, to know the love of Christ, which passes knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. It's the foundation of our faith. Our faith is not based on what we do or what we believe or what we say. Our faith is based on the fact that we love one another. In fact, Jesus tells the disciples, this is how the world's going to know that you're my beloved, if you love one another. It's the key to unity, according to Ephesians chapter 4. Walking in love is where we begin. That is the start of this walk, this journey, this trip. Secondly, we need to walk as children of the light. Ephesians 5:8. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord. Walk as children of light. If you've been in the 9 over the last several weeks, you know that we're children of light. Anybody? Everybody been there? None of you? Okay, we're going to have to work on that. The new 9 starts on January 18th. But we found out that this last semester, we are all sons and daughters of God. What does that mean? Well, walking in the light has a lot of benefit. Psalm chapter 89, and you might want to write some of these down and look them up later. Psalm 89, verses 15 and 16. Blessed are the people who know the joyful sound. They walk, O Lord, in the light of your countenance. In your name they rejoice all day long, and in your righteousness they are exalted. Walking as children of the light promises great joy. It's the fulfillment that comes from knowing Christ. We're all sons and daughters of the light, it says in 1 Thessalonians 5. But here's what it says in 1 John chapter 1. 1 John chapter 1, verse 7. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. Walking as children of light gives us the power for cleansing. It gives us the power for cleansing. We walk in love. We walk as children of the light. And thirdly, we walk in wisdom. Ephesians 5:15. See then that you walk circumspectly. That's a fun word to say. Not as fools, but as wise, and redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Proverbs 9, verse 10 tells us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Let that sink in for a second. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now, when we talk about the fear of the Lord, I want to make sure we understand clearly, we're not talking about, oh God, he's going to hit me with a lightning bolt. That's not the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord comes from an awesome, deep respect. Now, I grew up in an Italian family. My parents were strong, loud, boisterous, and at times rough. I don't know if you can relate, probably not, but my dad was one of those that you would get spanked first and then ask questions later. And for a long time, I had a fear of my dad. Not the healthy fear. Because I knew if I stepped out of line, it was going to get smacked, and then we'd talk about it. That's not the healthy kind of fear that the Lord requires. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. When I learn to respect and love the fear, the awesomeness of God. You know, sometimes I think the problem is we don't think he's able. Right? We just sang it. Who am I? Who am I to say he's not able? Who am I, this little speck of a person? Think about it this way for a minute. Science tells us that in the course of a lifetime, the man will use anywhere from 3 to 8% of his brain capacity. Some people believe that Einstein used like 12%. So, here we are. God creates the universe. In the universe, he makes this planet, we'll call it Earth. On this planet Earth, he puts these people, and in this person, he puts a brain, and in that itty-bitty little brain that we use maybe 5% of in our lifetime, we have the audacity to tell God that we know better. We have the audacity to tell God, who created it all, that we are in charge. That's not wisdom. That's not wisdom. Wisdom is trusting that God is in charge and knows what he's doing. Listen to what it says in Proverbs chapter 4. Get wisdom. Let me say it the way it's written. Get wisdom and understanding. Do not forget, nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will preserve you. Love her, and she will keep you. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and all you're getting, get understanding. Wisdom is the foundation block that we build the rest of it on. James 1:5 says, if any of you lack wisdom, all you have to do is ask. Anybody? Anybody feel like you could use a little wisdom? Yeah, I think so. I could. One of my favorite verses in the Bible ties in very nicely with our topic today. Micah 6:8. Micah 6:8 says, he has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? This is what the Lord requires of us. This is what the Lord requires of me and you. Do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Walk humbly with your God. Don't run. Walk humbly with your God. We're going to close with this. 1 John chapter 4. Verse 16. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If any loves the world, the love of the Father is not him. But all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but of the world. Oops, I'm in the wrong chapter. No wonder that didn't fit. Let's try the right verse. And we have known and believed the love that God has for us. God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God in him. If we walk in love, we walk as children of the light, we walk in wisdom, then we know that God dwells with us and us in him. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to anybody? Well, when we're talking about walking, I have to close with this is one of my favorite stories. Way back in the beginning in Genesis chapter 5, and maybe some of you have heard me share this before, but it bears repeating. In the beginning of Genesis 5, we see the family of Adam, and we go through this whole list, probably like 16, 17 verses of so-and-so begat so-and-so, and that person lived X amount of years and had another child named so-and-so, and he lived, and then they died. And then he died. Every verse, as we go through this, ends with, and then he died. Until you get to verse 20, so all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. After he begot Methuselah, Enoch walked with God, note that, 300 years, and he had sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. I love this story. And in my weird imagination, in my strange way of thinking, I can only imagine that it was like when God first created Adam and they were walking in the cool of the day and they would just walk together and share. And then Enoch comes along and Enoch walked with God. And Enoch was so close to God that they just walked and they shared. And it was a beautiful thing. And then one day as they're walking, God says to Enoch, "You know, Enoch, we're closer to my house than we are to yours. Why don't you just come home with me?" And God took him, and he was no more. What a beautiful way to end your life. I want to be so close to God. I want to walk so in tune with God that I hear his voice and I know his touch and I feel him every step of the way. And someday he says, "You know, we're closer to my house. Why don't you just come home with me?" The worship team's coming, and we're going to share a few songs. And I want to ask you to reflect on a couple things as they do. Number one, what must I do to be saved? If you have not come to grips with the answer to that question, there will be people here to pray with. And someone will pray with you, and you will know that you know that you know that you know in the deepest part of your heart that you know the answer to that question. Secondly, I want you to ask yourself, where have I come from and where am I going? And what do I do to walk that walk to get where I'm going? That makes sense? Will you stand with me? And if the prayer team could come forward, please. I'm going to ask that you just take a few minutes to focus. Close your eyes. Open your hands, open your heart. Let the presence of the Holy Spirit speak to you in the next couple minutes. Leave this room different than the way you came in. Let God's miracle take place today.